Hello there, everybody. Noted internet defender of Game of Thrones Season 8, Adam Cleary here with his sword drawn and his teeth bared, ready to flail wildly at all the people who think a TV show somehow owes them something. And before I start, just a quick shout out to all the truthers amongst you who thought that I'd hated Season 8 so much I'd quit What Culture and refuse to make ups and downs. I was actually in Prague, just having the best time. Anyway, yes, onto the video, that's why you're here. Before I start, I should obviously say that broadly I thought Season 8 was okay. I'm still in that camp that largely enjoyed it. I just think when you're trying to wrap up 71 episodes of epic television using 5,000 pages of as yet unfinished source material, you're not going to please everybody, and they got kinda close. But, and this is the whole point of this video, but, there are some glaring ways it could be improved upon. Practical things about the limitation of the run, some creative decisions about what they did or did not include in the final story. There's just some really obvious ways they could have made a lot of people a lot happier. So with that in mind, my name is Adam Cleary, the man in the sick jacket, making What Culture an absolute packet. And these are 10 ways Game of Thrones could have saved Season 8. Number 10, don't throw away the world building. Alright, so Westeros is arguably the most richly written fictional land in television history. There are dozens of towns and cities all fully fleshed out, all with their own personalities, all brimming with life, and all with entire stories dedicated to flourishing within them. But yet Season 8 pretty much divided our time down the middle between Winterfell and King's Landing, with a little tiny stop off in Dragonstone along the way. Now yes, that makes sense because where the two biggest things were happening, but life does go on in the realm. With so much travelling and waiting to do in this season, the show could have so easily just moved some of these events to various different points along the map. It would have shown the audience both what they were fighting to defend and what they were later fighting to conquer. And if nothing else, it would have given the opening credits a bit more variety. Number 9, check in with characters away from the main story. Just got a little list for you here, quick rundown of all the things going on in Season 8 that were not either the defense of Winterfell or the sacking of King's Landing. Just see if any of these ring a bell, right? We've got Yara Greyjoy retaking the Iron Islands from Euron. We've got a new and unnamed prince being crowned in Dorne. We've got Cersei governing King's Landing and preparing the capital for a siege. We've got Edmure Tully being released from prison. We've got Tyrion wrestling with his feelings for Dany. Sansa becoming the Northern Lord's leader of choice. The Second Sons governing all those cities in Essos in Dany's name. We've got Mira Reed being reunited with Howland Reed, her father, who of course does know the truth of Jon's parentage. We've got Gendry just marching up to Storm's End and telling everybody that he's actually in charge of the place now. We've got Bronn journeying all the way from the capital to Winterfell, and of course Arya and the Hound journeying all the way from Winterfell to King's Landing. We've got the Golden Company presumably doing something, and we've got Hot Pie existing. None of this was even mentioned on screen. Pretty much. Yes, it all just either happened off screen, you had to imagine it in your little head, or it was just ignored entirely. Now yes, obviously I understand the stuff we actually got was way more important than any of that, but Thrones of Yore would have found time for it, and that's a shame. Number 8, acknowledge the narrative threads you don't need. And the problem with all that, you see, is if you're not going to roll up your sleeves and get involved with any of it, you can't just expect your audience to forget about it. Like, this is a show, let us not forget, that got to the height of its popularity because it encouraged its fans to ponder, wonder, delve, explore, theorize, everything else. It wants you to ask those questions, and now it just doesn't want you to ask those questions. Even if something no longer serves a narrative purpose, it is still poor writing to just introduce it and then throw it away unresolved. It just takes like a throwaway scene here, a little line of dialogue there, just something that taps the audience on the shoulder and says, yes, there you go, you see, you were wondering about this, that's what's happening with that. Not only helps flesh out your story, but it adds extra dimensions to your characters. Like, how much more would Cersei's death have meant if we'd watched her ruling King's Landing, if we understood what kind of a queen she was? How much harder would Tyrion's moralizing have been if we knew it was with both his head and his heart? Also, just give us more Arya Hound stuff. That's always the best bit. Number 7, give big moments more room to breathe. Yeah, the major feeling of things being rushed in Season 8 seems to come from this unquantifiable, unexplainable phenomenon of just big point to big point happening very quickly. It's impossible to measure because there's no right amount of time to leave for these things, but yeah. Should I just quickly point out that it isn't necessarily a bad thing to rush from big moment to big moment. Like, it took 7.5 minutes or something, from Jaime to free Tyrion from certain death, and him to find Shay in his father's bed, end up killing her in a scuffle, then crossbow his dad on the toilet, and nobody called that rushed. I think the problem with Season 8, though, isn't so much that it was one thing after another, it was just that every time it did do a big moment, it just kind of locked you in and then tried its best to move on. Like, Tyrion has explained to Jon that Dany might be a threat to his sisters, so that's why he might kill her. By the way, the next scene is him killing her. And there were countless moments like that in Season 8 where they just needed 2 or 3 extra scenes to let the facts settle and let you digest them all before moving that story on. Like, take that whole Jon and Dany thing. That needed another scene where he had to go through the whole love and duty thing in his head, and another scene on top of that where you establish without a shadow of a doubt that Dany is indeed a threat to his sisters. Just, we know that's what it is, but just let us play in that space a little bit more. Like, if you're going to let the characters go on these fraught emotional journeys, give us the time to catch up. Number 6, spell things out. Right, so, despite what your knacker mate on the internet might have told you, Jaime leaving Brienne and Dany torching King's Landing both made sense, both in the context of the story and the characters in it. The former was a very necessary final part in a redemption arc where one man struggles to overcome his past and find a happy ending, only to discover that's not actually what he wants, whereas the latter was the final breaking point of somebody who had lost all their connections to the real world and realised if they couldn't be loved, they had to be feared. But still, a lot of the audience struggled with these because the moments leading up to these twists weren't immediately obvious. Like, for Jaime, it was that bit where he's in bed with Brienne staring at her, realising that she's not Cersei, and for Dany, it was that moment where Jon rejects her just after she's watched so many of her close friends die. Like, they were there, you saw them, but the show didn't really go, yeah, that's what that's going to be. You just have to put more emphasis on these little triggering moments. You have to give the audience more time to sit and wonder what's going on in their head, and then if you've told the story right, they will arrive at the right conclusion, and the show just didn't like doing that. Number 5, fully resolve the Night King story. Yeah, bit obvious this one. Do not spend 7 entire seasons building up this antagonist as this silent, mysterious threat to the whole world who comes with the greatest, most terrifying army Westeros has ever seen. Give us all these clues about his origins and his goals and his aspirations, and then do 2 entire seasons worth of marketing on him to just kill him off without giving us any answers. Who is he? Where did he come from beyond simply the children of the forest creating him? Why is he making his move now? What's the extent of his powers? What does he want? Where is he going? Is he going to go all the way to King's Landing? Does he just want to kill Bran? What's his obsession with Bran in the first place? Like, we don't know any of this, and the show invited us to ask these questions. And you can almost trace the exact moment public opinion began to turn on Season 8 to the exact moment Arya killed the Night King, because we realised then we weren't going to get the show we thought we were going to get. We might not be getting answers to these questions we've wondered about for so very long. There are countless fan theories that could have been delved into. There are so many ideas to go along with the Night King story, and in the end, they chose not to give us any of them. Don't do that. Number 4, Lena Headey. You have one of the best actresses in the entire world, playing one of the most complex and interesting villains in television history, and all you can think to do with her is have a stand, looking out of a window with a glass of wine, looking increasingly concerned. So, yeah, my suggestion is give her more scenes. Very, very obviously, give her more scenes. Number 3, actually make Jon Snow the centre of his own story. Game of Thrones has and always will be the story of one Jon Snow. His struggles as a child with his bastard parentage, to him discovering the truth of his history, his ventures beyond the wall, him getting involved in politics, falling in love with a woman who would turn out to be his aunt. It always keeps coming back to him. It is his story. Like, that question about his parentage dominated every single discussion about the show. His murder was one of the big turning points, and his revival, again, another one of the big turning points. We knew he was going to be the man who had to lead the army of the living against the army of the dead, which we thought was going to be the most important part of the show, and he was eventually going to fall in love with Dany, and that would give us the end game to the entire story. It was always about him, except for when it was supposed to be about him. Like, let's just recap here. What did he do in Season 8? He chopped up a load of Lannisters, he shouted at a dragon, and then he just refused to shag his aunt. Meh. Now, yes, obviously I'm forgetting the big one where he kills Dany, and that's effectively the end of the story. He did get to do the one big thing, but even after that, he's just shipped back off up north while all the other characters decide what the fate of the Seven Kingdoms is going to be. He was effectively an NPC in his own story. And the thing is, even without majorly changing the story, even without changing what they've decided to do here, it would have been so easy to make him more important. Just have him more on the front lines in the Battle of Winterfell, doing more important things there, and then have him leading the sack of King's Landing. Have more scenes where he's just struggling with whether or not he loves Dany or whether or not he needs his server. Just do more Jon Snow stuff, because it's Jon Snow's story. Number 2, expand it to 10 episodes. Yeah, when you boil all of this down, the obvious retort to it all is, well, yeah, they didn't do any of that, did they, Adam? Because they only had 6 episodes, you cleft. And I mean, yes, that is a fair comment, I guess, even if the cleft thing did seem a little bit much. But if you're struggling to fit your story into a certain amount of episodes, and it's less episodes than you normally have, maybe don't use less episodes. Now, yes, I know both producers have said that 6 episodes is what they wanted to tell the story they had to tell, but it has since come out that they were offered the full 10 by HBO. So, given the amount that we had to throw by the wayside or just forget about on the journey to getting to the end, maybe they shouldn't have done that. Maybe if they'd had 10 episodes, it would have fixed everything. But that being said, though, if you really want to tell this story in 6 episodes and your fan base do not find it to be a satisfactory conclusion, there is one other idea I have. Number 1, break it into 2 seasons. All right, let's call a spade here. The finale to Game of Thrones was deemed so unsatisfactory by fans that over 1 million people have signed a petition calling for it to be remade, but better than what it was. Now, people are literally dying in this world, and the planet is slowly cooking us every single day, but you do you. If people really don't like this as a conclusion, and on some level Benioff and Weiss must have known that this was going to happen, then it shouldn't have been the conclusion. Build the entire season around the war between the living and the dead, build up to the Battle of Winterfell over the course of the entire thing, and then leave the question of who sits on the Iron Throne to next season. You give Big George time to finish at least one of the books, or possibly even both, if these reports of him doing them concurrently are to be believed, which I don't think they are. You give all the stories time to flourish, you give them room to breathe, you give us more things that we want, and if you are so insistent on telling these stories in 6-episode chunks, just do both seasons of 6 episodes. And you might be sitting there going, but that's like loads more money. I don't care. It's not my problem, that's HBO's problem. You think another series of Game of Thrones wouldn't have made money? So, there you have it. Big clever man on the internet with no telly experience whatsoever thinks he can fix everything that's wrong with the most scrutinized TV show of all time. And he's not wrong, is he? So let us know what you made of it in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But in the meantime, though, thank you so much for watching. I'm away to get all of the ash dry cleaned out of this. And I'll see you soon. Bye.